What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to dive into a couple of topics regarding the New York Giants. The first being Daniel Jones. The other thing I kind of wanted to talk about was the college football season and the lack thereof could affect next year's NFL draft and what it means for the New York Giants. But I'll get into all that throughout this video. The first thing we're going to touch on is Daniel Jones. I'll pull up some of the quotes that he had to say as he talked to the media. But even more importantly, I want to pull up the picture in case you guys haven't seen it of what he looks like going into the season. Of course, we were all very excited, when we heard about how he was putting on 8-9 pounds of muscle, getting ready for the year, and how that will help translate on the field. Well, for one, you hope that it improves his arm strength, but even more importantly, you hope that it improves his grip on the football, being a stronger football player, and he certainly looks like he is. He looks like a different guy going into his sophomore season with some of the work that he's been putting in. And a lot of you guys in my community notes came up with some very creative nicknames. Of course, he's known for Danny Dimes, but you guys were saying Danny Dumbbells, Danny Quads. He definitely has been putting in work, and I have no doubt in my mind he's been putting in work in the film room too, or as much as he possibly can to try to improve his game. That just seems to be like the type of athlete that Daniel Jones is, a guy that works hard, that just wants to get better every single day. And I'm going to pull up one of the quotes that he had to say today that rings home to that. I absolutely loved hearing one of the things that Daniel Jones had to say. In addition to that, I wanted to jump into the collegiate football season. And, as uncertain as we are, there may be an NFL season. We're seeing baseball play, we're seeing basketball play, even though baseball's having some hiccups. Football's a contact sport. You're asking these guys to travel all around the country. So there's certainly some questions about whether or not they'll get to have a season or at least a full season this year in the NFL. You've also seen over 50 players opt out, 3 of which have been on the New York Giants. So there's certainly some question marks there. But I think there's even bigger question marks in the collegiate football ranks. And that is where I have a question, right? And where I think the Giants, when you really think about it, could have a huge advantage in comparison to the rest of the league. I do not think there's going to be a college football season, if you ask me, to be completely honest with you, for the simple reason the college athletes don't have nearly the amount of incentive that the NFL athletes have when it comes to risking their health. And you've seen some of the biggest collegiate football players already opt out this season. I'll get into some of the names, but there were 2 guys that Giants fans consistently talk about as potential prospects that they would like to see the New York Giants draft in the upcoming draft. Of course, the Giants need a lot of help on that defensive side of the football. But if there's not a college football season, obviously, it's not the same evaluation process, right? You're going to have a whole season where you're not going to have any game film on these guys leading up into the draft. You're going to have to go back a year. You're not going to have the scouts that you would, you're not going to have the same scouting process, right? A lot of times you would probably have more extensive scouting on these players in the year in which they're supposed to be coming out. But I'll get into why I think the Giants could have a huge advantage when it comes to that, because everybody in the league is dealing with that, but the Giants coaching staff might be the best equipped. But let's jump into some of the quotes. Let's talk about Daniel Jones first, and then we'll talk about Greg Rousseau and Micah Parsons. Here's Paul Schwartz. Daniel Jones says, I wanted to get stronger. I wanted to gain some weight. Says he did that this offseason. Says he weighs 228 or 229 pounds. I think last year he was 220, so he's put on those 8 or 9 pounds. And this guy just looks like a different football player. Here's the picture. You look at those quads, they are popping out at you. Looks like you're in 3D. So you could really see the work that Jones put in this offseason as he tries to improve in his sophomore year as an NFL quarterback. So that's really encouraging things. Next thing, Daniel Jones on Darius Slayton. He's a guy that comes to work every day and knows what to do. He can really get out and run. A big frame, a big target. I know he's excited going into this year. And I only pulled up 3 quotes. This is one of them, just to kind of drive home the chemistry thing that he has with Darius Slayton. We're all really excited about that. And obviously Slayton last year had tremendous success with Daniel Jones. And I thought yesterday, Burleson brought up a really good point. Of all the receivers this year, when you factor in everything with the shortened offseason, you would think Daniel Jones is going to try to target the guy he's most comfortable with. Well, Slayton is probably the guy he's most comfortable with. They both came in the same rookie year. And he's shown that he's had chemistry with him. He has more playing experience with Darius Slayton, whether it be in preseason last year with the second team or throughout the regular season. If you remember correctly, of course, Shepard went down, Barkley was down, Ingram was down, Tate was suspended the first 4 games. So he has the most chemistry and the most experience with Darius Slayton. But he just goes on to say very encouraging things about him. As Giants fans, we're all hoping this is the next great duo in the NFL. And then finally, I absolutely love this quote coming from Daniel Jones. Sounds like something that Joe Judge would say. Daniel Jones on the 2020 goals. My focus is on the camp and making sure I'm prepared mentally. My focus is what we're doing day to day here. And I love hearing that. He's saying, I'm going to take it day by day. He was obviously asked, what's your 2020 goals? Most players would probably say 30 touchdowns, Pro Bowl. He's saying, I just want to get better each and every day, which should be the exact mindset for any player that's in Daniel Jones' situation. A second-year quarterback, you're trying to mature, you're trying to get better, and I expect all the younger players on the New York Giants to have the same exact philosophy. But I absolutely loved reading that when I saw that quote. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on some of the big-name collegiate athletes that have already opted out. Micah Parsons, the linebacker out of Penn State. Penn State's linebacker Micah Parsons, one of the top prospects in college football, intends to opt out for the 2020 season and enter the 2021 NFL draft. And then the same news came out today from NFL Update about Greg Rousseau, another big opt-out in college football world. Miami defensive end Greg Rousseau, one of the best players in college football and arguably the best pass rush prospect in the 2021 draft, is opting out for the season. And those are the two names that I've heard the most as a Giants fan from a lot of you guys, for the simple reason is those are probably our two biggest needs currently on our defense. We talk about it all the time. We do not have a supreme pass rusher. We lack a really good middle linebacker, at least one in coverage. We all hope that Martinez does a really good job for us. And those are two prospects that are on a lot of New York Giants fans' wish lists. But if the NCAA does not have a college season, why do I think the New York Giants have a tremendous advantage in comparison to at least most teams in the NFL? Well, you look at the New York Giants coaching staff. They have a brand new coaching staff with a bunch of young minds. We'll start with Joe Judge. Even though Joe Judge has not coached in the college ranks for a very long time, he clearly has had ties in the college ranks, as evidenced by a lot of the coaches that he's brought on. He coached at Alabama. He brought on a coach from Alabama. Of course, he still has ties to Nick Saban. So, yeah, Bill Belichick probably has the same ties, but regardless, he's got a good guy to talk to there in terms of scouting players and knowing the players that are coming out in the college draft. But even more importantly, when you look at the New York Giants coaching staff, and not even counting Brett Bielema, who coached at Wisconsin for a number of years along with Arkansas and came into the NFL just 2 years ago with the New England Patriots. But if you exclude him, they have 5 coaches on their staff right now that were coaching in college just the year before, one of which was a recruiter at the collegiate level. That being Burton Burns, the running back coach out of Alabama, who now we're hoping improves Saquon Barkley. Derek Dooley, who was the offensive coordinator for Missouri and was widely responsible for some of the success of Drew Lock in college. Kevin Sherr, the linebackers coach for the New York Giants, he coached at both Georgia and Tennessee over the last 5 years, and he has experience with these players. Sean Spencer, who's the defensive line coach for the New York Giants, Coach Chaos, coached on the same staff of where Micah Parsons is coming from, Penn State, and he's coached against some of the best players in the country. And Mike Trier, who I mentioned briefly, I think he's only 30 years old, but coming from Marshall, was the head recruiter there. So he's recruited some of the players at the college ranks. And where will this really come into play? Not so much in the first round, because you know your top prospects, Trevor Lawrence, so on and so forth. But in the later rounds of the draft, I do think the experience from the coaches on this coaching staff at the collegiate ranks could actually prove to be a tremendous advantage for the New York Giants headed into the 2021 draft. If there's no college season, which we don't know that will be the case yet, but we certainly know that some of the best prospects are opting out and expect more and more to opt out before the start of their potential season for the main reason that I talked about. They don't get compensated like the NFL players do. I think it's pretty much common sense. As far as Daniel Jones goes, as Giants fans, I think you should be excited. I think you should still go in cautiously optimistic due to the fact that it's been a shortened preseason with a new system. We're playing a challenging schedule, specifically early on. But with all that being said, you could see that this guy's been putting in the work. He has that work ethic, and I expect Daniel Jones to have a strong sophomore season. We'll see if he's able to improve on the fumbling problems, reading zone defenses. I think those were his 2 main problems going into his sophomore year. But if he can, I think Daniel Jones could really take off in his second year. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.